There are those who drain your very essence, not with the sharpness of a blade, nor with the sting of a threat. They do so far more insidiously, by placing expectations upon your shoulders, cloaked in the guise of kinship and duty. And strangely enough, though they are the ones asking, you are the one left bearing the weight of guilt if you do not comply. Not because they are truly desperate, not because they lack the capacity to stand on their own, but because their presence carries an unseen gravitational pull, blurring your boundaries and forcing you to bear a karmic burden that is not yours to carry. Suddenly, your inner peace is quietly usurped. You become an emotional receptacle for their negativity, a personal bank for their fiscal missteps, and an unwitting arbiter for their family conflicts. You grow weary, utterly drained, yet find yourself unsure how to release yourself without being branded selfish. Now, dare to confront this truth. What would happen if you ceased acquiescing to those unreasonable demands? If you returned responsibility to its rightful owner? If you decided that the serenity of your own soul is more important than the fleeting satisfaction of others? And this is the crucible of conscious awakening. For according to Carl Jung, there are 5 forbidden acts that, if embraced, will cause you to sabotage your journey of individuation and forfeit your authentic self. So, let us explore these 5 principles, so you may begin to safeguard your inner radiance today. 1. Carrying burdens that aren't yours. Are you carrying burdens that don't belong to you? Have you ever found yourself becoming the solution to someone else's troubles, even though deep down, all you want is to live your own life in peace? This question sounds simple, but the answer is far more complicated than we think, because so many of us, sometimes for our entire lives, never realize, who are we really living for? Whose problems are we actually solving? And are we paying the price for kindness given in the wrong place? It starts with a simple yes. Things rarely start with something big. Sometimes it's just a gentle request. Can you help me with this? 2. Just this once. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know what to do. And we, whether out of politeness, compassion, fear of disappointing others, or sometimes just the feeling of being needed, are willing to respond with a nod. But behind each seemingly small yes is a slippery path that slowly leads us further away from our own boundaries. Carl Jung once emphasized, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That darkness, in many cases, is our reluctance to face our own vulnerability. Fear of being judged, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of not being loved if we refuse to help someone. That fear slowly turns us into a life raft, a wall blocking the waves for others even when those storms were never ours to begin with. Here is your requested translation, with paragraphing and presentation exactly as your Vietnamese original. Rescue. The habit that brings burdens. There is a sad reality. Many people grow up believing that they are only worthy if they can help, even rescue, others. This stems from subtle lessons in family and society, where kindness and sacrifice are excessively glorified. In fact, many people tie their self-worth to the role of the helper. If I don't help, I am a bad person. If I don't step in and take on the responsibility, no one else will do it. Deep down, they fear that if they no longer keep this role, the connection and love given to them will also disappear. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the hidden part inside each individual, containing desires, fears, and wounds we don't want to face. When we take on other people's responsibilities as our own, we are actually avoiding facing the fear of being rejected, fear of becoming invisible, fear of losing value in the eyes of others. Kindness then becomes a form of helping addiction, a draining loop where the more we give, the more empty we feel. When kindness becomes a psychological trap, many people justify, I help because I truly care. But pause and observe. How many times have you felt exhausted, frustrated, or even angry after carrying someone else's burden? Have you ever helped others only to end up feeling used, disrespected, or under more pressure? If so, this is no longer pure love, but rather a psychological trap you set for yourself. In reality, society is always full of people willing to distribute their burdens to anyone who is easily sympathetic or easily persuaded. These are the ones who always have an emergency, always need help, always expect others to step in and solve the consequences they created. They lean on you more and more, until if you ever stop, they make you feel guilty, even turn around and blame you. Breaking the rescue cycle, stepping out of the old loop. To escape this cycle, it doesn't just take one refusal, but rather a process of self-reflection and rebuilding personal boundaries. At first, you might feel uneasy, guilty, even turned away by friends or family, but when you persist in protecting your limits, people will gradually understand that you are not someone who is always willing to shoulder everything for them forever. Learning to recognize what is your responsibility and what belongs to others is a vital life skill. Carl Jung asserted that the process of maturing requires a healthy separation from the expectations of others, even family. This doesn't mean you are uncaring, but that you know how to love in the right way, starting with yourself. Building healthy boundaries. You may ask, how do I know when to help and when to stop? Ask yourself, is this truly my responsibility? Do I really want to do this? Or am I just doing it out of fear of being judged? If I don't help, what will happen to the other person? Can they solve it themselves? Will this make me exhausted, anxious, or hurt for a long time? If your answers lean toward negative emotions, have the courage to say no. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's wise. You weren't born to be the tape to mend everyone else's cracks, nor the safety net for every mistake. Learning to respect yourself is the first step in teaching others to respect you too. True love doesn't leave you drained. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. When you love someone, love with freedom, with respect. Real love does not require you to sacrifice yourself to the point of losing your own identity. On the contrary, it helps you grow, become stronger, and have enough courage to choose peace for yourself." A healthy relationship is when both people are responsible for their own feelings and actions, not when one person becomes the solution, the scapegoat, or the savior. That is the only way to maintain a lasting maging connection without anyone feeling suffocated or taken advantage of. Living for yourself, not for someone else's script. Finally, remember, your life is not anyone else's backup plan. You have the right to live true to yourself, to prioritize your own health, joy, and peace. When you stop carrying burdens that aren't yours, you'll be surprised to realize the world doesn't collapse, people are still fine, and you are freer than ever. Only when you put yourself at the center of your own life do you truly have the strength to move forward, to love, and to grow in a healthy way. That's also how you honor the greatest privilege of a lifetime, living as your true self, as Carl Jung said. Are you carrying something that doesn't belong to you? Have you ever dared to let go of a burden to choose peace? Share your story, because maybe you will inspire someone else who is still stuck in the rescue loop and doesn't know how to break free. 2. Lending money without a real emergency. Lending money, especially in close relationships, is always a sensitive topic and can even spark a lot of unspoken controversy. Each of us has at least once faced a situation where a relative or friend asks to borrow money without actually being in dire straits. These might be requests with vague reasons like, "Things are tough right now, just need to borrow for a bit," or confiding words that subtly but clearly expect you to say yes and help. In that moment, you might feel hesitant, wanting to help just to get it over with, but at the same time, worrying that your action could disrupt or even take away the peace you've worked so hard to build. If you pause long enough, you'll recognize a truth. Lending money is not always rooted in emergency or basic need. Many people borrow money because they have made poor financial decisions, sometimes repeatedly over a long period, and now expect someone else to put out the fire for them. When loved ones or close friends come to you, chances are you'll be caught between two choices: refuse and face guilt, or agree and then be haunted by other worries about trust, fairness, and your own value in the relationship. It's easy to see that if this person keeps making the same mistakes, carelessly lending money only prolongs the negative cycle. At this point, you're not simply helping them through a tough time. You're actually shouldering the consequences of actions they deliberately chose beforehand. Behind each non-urgent loan, few realize that this is a subtle transfer of responsibility. The borrower, whether unintentionally or not, can make you the one who suffers for the consequences they created. With phrases like, "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know what to do," or, "If you don't help, there's nothing left between us." Such hints, together with a heavy atmosphere, put you under both emotional pressure and force you to bear a burden that isn't yours. Guilt may rise up, pushing you into thinking that if you don't help, you're cold, selfish, or worse, you become the bad guy. In the shared story among friends or family, things get even worse when the person who receives the money doesn't respect your boundaries, automatically treats your generosity as something owed, and in the long run, turns your close relationship into a debt you never wanted. The line between sincere help and feeling used grows ever thinner, leaving you with even more anxiety and inner turmoil. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." The deeper meaning of this saying is that everyone must take responsibility for their own life, including their weaknesses, stumbles, and mistakes. When someone repeatedly asks for favors and expects others to shoulder the consequences of their financial decisions, they are avoiding facing themselves. This not only prevents them from maturing but also places a burden on others, creating imbalance in the relationship. The more easily you tolerate those consequences, the more you strip them of the motivation to take responsibility for their actions, inadvertently becoming the guarantor for a chain of ongoing mistakes. That is not love, but rather collusion with someone's weakness. If you look deeply into Jung's philosophy, you will realize that irrationally lending money blurs personal boundaries, one of the essential conditions for anyone to maintain autonomy, self-respect, and the feeling of being themselves in any relationship. From this perspective, protecting boundaries is not just about finances, but also about safeguarding inner strength and personal growth. Jung once emphasized, boundaries are not just something that separate us from others, but also that define who we are. When you lend money without a truly necessary reason, arguers, it's no different from letting others cross a set boundary, gradually causing you to lose yourself amidst endless desires and demands. Once the habit of unconditional giving repeats too often, you'll find yourself trading not just money, but also your peace, time, mental energy, and sometimes even your self-respect. The truth is, everything valuable in life has its limits, including kindness and the willingness to share. To realize this and have the courage to say, no, you must listen carefully to both your feelings and your reason. If the request for money comes with feelings of anxiety, insecurity, or discomfort, it's a sign that your boundaries are being tested. You can think about the near future. If this money isn't returned, will you still feel comfortable with that person, or will the closeness be fractured? If you agree, are you encouraging an unhealthy lifestyle, where all consequences are pushed onto others to resolve? These questions may seem practical, but in reality, they are an indispensable part of protecting yourself and safeguarding fairness and longevity in any relationship. Many people confuse generosity with erasing their own value. Sometimes, refusing to lend money is the act of true love, because it forces the other person to take responsibility, learn how to deal with their own consequences, and grow from those mistakes. Meanwhile, if you're always willing to save someone just out of fear of disappointing them, you will gradually become a shadow in your own life, always in the background, always sacrificing, yet never truly receiving the peace or the appreciation you deserve. Jung once warned about the dark side of kindness. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, or morphine, or idealism. Kindness without control, generosity without awareness can turn into a kind of addiction, the consequence of which is the fracturing of personal value, dependency in relationships, and ultimately, the loss of your own inner direction. When you lend money unreasonably, you may think you're helping, but in reality, you're enabling a chain of immature behaviors in someone else. Many relationships have broken down, not because of the money, but because of the feeling of being used, the imbalance of power, or wounds that cannot heal when trust is continuously tested. Dodged calls, unkept promises, or unusual silence after borrowing. These are all the first cracks in a friendship or family tie that should have been built on equality and respect. Worse, if you keep accepting, others will see it as the rule, not the exception. They'll come back to you next time. And with every instance, your value in their eyes shrinks a little more, and your peace moves further out of reach. Maintaining boundaries is never easy, especially in close relationships, when you're afraid of distance, or the reputation of being insensitive. Yet, as Jung once wrote, there can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. Only when you listen to your true feelings, bravely recognize where your safe limits are, Can you transform hidden anxieties into the power to say no at the right time? That's also when you regain control over your life, protect your financial safety, and preserve the freedom of choice that you deserve. Ultimately, remember that giving does not mean losing yourself, and loving someone does not mean taking responsibility for their life. True maturity comes when you are strong enough to say that's enough, know when to pull back your kindness, and steadfastly maintain your material, mental, and emotional boundaries. If you ever feel torn, remind yourself, a relationship is truly healthy only when both sides take responsibility for their own choices, respect each other's value, and don't treat kindness as something owed, because in the end, only you can decide whether your peace, freedom, and personal value will be fully protected. 3. Mediating family conflicts. In most families, conflict is almost unavoidable. Differences in viewpoints, personalities, roles, and expectations often create tension, disagreements, and sometimes even long-lasting rifts. But what makes many people the most exhausted is not the arguments themselves, but the pressure to stand in the middle, to play the referee, to mend, reconcile, or try to meet everyone's expectations, even though that was never naturally your responsibility. This role can come very quietly, a gentle reminder from your mother. Call your brother and ask how he's doing. You two shouldn't be upset with each other anymore. A hopeful look from your father. Say something to your mom for me. Maybe she'll listen to you. Or a family gathering where everyone silently expects you to step up and smooth over the simmering conflicts. You don't even have to explicitly agree. Just staying silent or not walking away is enough for the role to be placed upon you. At first, the effort to mediate and resolve family conflicts may come from love, a desire to maintain peace, or simply not wanting anyone to suffer any more pain. Deep down, you might think you're helping, that you're contributing to a more pleasant atmosphere for everyone. However, over time, you'll increasingly realize how much more complex the reality is. Family is a place bound by blood, but it's also where negative emotions can flare up most easily, from nameless little issues to old wounds that still haven't healed. When family members are unwilling to face their feelings directly, they often look for a third person to confide in, place their hopes for reconciliation on, or even transfer their own guilt and disappointment onto. From this perspective, being pulled into the role of referee is, in fact, a subtle emotional trap. No matter how well you do, there's always one side who feels unsatisfied, one who thinks you're biased, or sometimes, both sides believe you're not really on theirs. The fear of conflict, worry about family rifts, and the desire to keep the peace gradually turn into an invisible burden you don't know how to let go of. Every time a conflict erupts, you're pulled back into the old cycle, persuading one side, comforting the other, judging right and wrong, and then soothing the overall mood. Unfortunately, when it's all over, you're often the most tired, the most drained, but the least thanked. Sometimes, reproaches and frustrations even turn back on you, just because you didn't fulfill the role everyone expected. Carl Jung once said, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent." The deeper meaning of this statement is that all repressed emotions, all unrecognized wounds, if not resolved by their owner, will inevitably spread and impact other family members, and even pass down to the next generation. When you step in as the mediator, you inadvertently become the bridge, but you also become the one who bears the emotional aftershocks of those wounds. You may listen to your mother confide about the pain caused by your father, then hear your father share his loneliness, and then try to connect both sides with advice, comfort, or compromise. Yet, the more you try, the more powerless you feel, because the root of the problem is not with you, but with the emotions and wounds that the real owners have not yet faced or dealt with themselves. Jung believed that everyone must take responsibility for their own journey of maturity and inner reconciliation. No one can heal someone else if that person is not willing to confront their own darkness. When you take on the role of mediator, you may think you are protecting the peace, but in reality, you are delaying the growth process of other family members while also slowing down your own. Many people are stuck in this role for years, to the point where they gradually lose track of who they are, what their real feelings are, and what feelings they are carrying on behalf of others. Each time a conflict happens, you carry a bit more resentment, a bit more nameless fatigue, all accumulating into psychological pressure that is hard to untangle. Family itself is a complex system, in which every individual has both light and shadow, and hidden corners that have never been spoken aloud. Sometimes, family conflict is not just about present disagreements, but the accumulation of years of hurt, misunderstandings, unacknowledged sacrifices, or unmet expectations. These cannot simply be resolved with a few words of reconciliation, but require the proactive facing and self-work of every family member. If you keep standing in the middle, absorbing all the pain and constantly trying to balance everything, not only do you hinder others from growing up, but you also rob yourself of the chance to rest, to heal, and to enjoy your own life. Jung emphasized the role of the process of individuation, the journey of becoming an individual, the process by which each person separates from the merging with family and community to become a complete and mature individual. This process requires each person to confront their own shadow, the dark part within themselves, instead of avoiding it or leaving it for someone else to solve. If everyone keeps waiting for you to play the referee, no one will have the real motivation to self-reflect, to heal themselves, and to change. Gradually, you become the intermediary, always pulled between sides, always on the defensive, anxious, unable to live authentically, unable to express your needs or show your emotions for fear of upsetting someone. Unfortunately, when you sacrifice yourself like that, the reward is often not worth it. Sometimes, after many efforts to reconcile, all you get in return is coldness, indifference, or even reproach if the outcome is not as expected. You become the scapegoat for the negative emotions of other members, while the real problems remain unresolved. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. This saying from Jung reminds us that there is no formula for reconciliation that fits everyone, just as no one can live someone else's life with only a few words of advice or temporary efforts. Gradually, if you continue to be drawn into the reluctant role of mediator, you will find yourself becoming emotionally exhausted. Each prolonged conflict builds up feelings of helplessness, anger, and sadness inside you, so that you no longer feel joy or have enough energy for things that truly matter to you. The worry and fear of being drawn into other people's wars keep you up at night, leave you feeling discouraged, and can even lead to depression. Worse still, if you keep trying to be the peacemaker, resentment that does not belong to you will cling to you. You begin to blame others for not solving their own problems, wonder why you always have to shoulder the burden, and then fall into a state of loneliness and alienation, even within your own family. Another dangerous consequence is that you lose the right to enjoy peace and joy in your own life. Instead of spending time on things you love, on personal growth, on healthy relationships, you drain your energy trying to please others, live up to their expectations, and constantly put out fires in battles that are not yours. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. This saying from Jung reminds everyone that it is your choices that determine who you are, not circumstances or roles imposed from the outside. Therefore, to truly mature and maintain inner peace, you need to learn how to say no to the reluctant role of referee. This is not being indifferent, nor is it abandoning your family. It is about returning responsibility to its rightful owner, so that each member is accountable for their own feelings, actions, and choices. Only when you know how to step away from roles that do not belong to you can you truly have the space to listen, heal, and develop yourself. You will learn how to love without shouldering, to empathize without sacrificing yourself, to support without dissolving into others' negative emotions. At first, this may cause some turbulence and make someone unhappy, but in the long run, it is the only way to build a healthy family ecosystem, where everyone knows how to self-heal and grow. Because, as Jung once wrote, who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakes. To truly awaken, each person needs to turn inward, face their own darkness, instead of seeking salvation outside or waiting for someone else to solve every problem. Choosing to step out of the role of referee does not mean you do not love your family. It means you have learned to love yourself first, to give your loved ones the right to grow, and to protect your own peace, joy, and values. Only when you do that can you truly be present, contribute, and enjoy life fully, freely, and peacefully. 4. Being asked to change who you are. Perhaps all of us have experienced this feeling. Someone, a friend, a lover, a colleague, or even a family member, expresses that they want you to change something about yourself. It could be a comment on your personality, a suggestion about your habits, or more direct requests concerning your interests, appearance, or lifestyle. At first, these requests might sound like they're for your own good, or come from a desire to help you fit in better with a certain group, to become cuter, more suitable, or simply to make the other person feel more comfortable around you. However, when the request for change does not stem from personal respect, but only from the desire to fit someone else's expectations, standards, or insecurities, it is no longer positive concern. It becomes a subtle form of manipulation, where someone else is trying to shape you according to their own ideal. The most dangerous thing about this kind of manipulation is that it is often disguised as care, for your benefit, or because, I just want what's best for you. The repetition of small remarks like, don't talk like that, you should try dressing this way, learn to behave like, or, you should give up that hobby, it's not suitable for your age, gradually erodes your self-confidence. As children, we learn to adapt, to be loved, to be accepted, and many people grow up carrying the fear of abandonment, fear of being different, and fear of disappointing others. They start to agree to small changes, thinking they're insignificant. But over time, every instance of bending yourself to please others is another chip away at your identity, another drain on your self-esteem. Carl Jung viewed this issue from a deep perspective, once emphasizing, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The process of individuation is the journey in which you dare to face the unique, complex nature of yourself, recognizing that no one has the right to define, fix, or reconstruct you just for their own needs. Modern society often glorifies assimilation, the ability to blend in, and the skill of adapting to the environment and the collective. But the truth is, none of us are born to be copies of others. Being forced to change just to please the crowd means you're forced to wear masks that don't fit, living a role instead of reality. Over time, you'll realize you no longer know which desires are real, which habits are borrowed, which interests are truly yours, and which ones you only pursue out of duty or to keep the peace. When someone constantly asks you to change your personality, interests, or lifestyle, they are actually not accepting your personal boundaries. This comes from control, a fear of difference, and sometimes insecurity or jealousy. They feel uncomfortable with your freedom or individuality and want to distort it to make their world more comfortable. This control can come in the form of social pressure, family culture, or unspoken rules in close relationships. But if you keep giving in, even feeling guilty for not changing, you are turning yourself into an unfinished draft, always being edited and corrected, never able to mature in the way you truly want. Jung once said, the most damaging thing for a child is the unlived life of the parent. The expectations imposed by parents and adults, those who have not fully lived their own lives, easily become pressure for the next generation. When you grow up in an environment where each individual must conform to a certain mold, you become afraid to assert your own identity, afraid to disobey, afraid of becoming different. Over time, you even forget your dreams, passions, or true instincts. Each time you bend to someone's expectations, you take another step further from your own starting point. The process of individuation that Jung emphasized is not a rebellious journey against society, but rather the process of recognizing, confronting, respecting, and accepting every aspect of yourself, both the light and the dark, both strengths and imperfections. It is the ability to say no when necessary, to set clear boundaries with those who do not respect your identity. No one can decide for you how you love, work, enjoy life, or choose your own values. Advice, suggestions, even criticism should only serve as reference materials, never as commands you must obey unconditionally. Living authentically has never been easy, especially in environments full of pressure to standardize. However, every time you bravely refuse to change, just to please someone else, you take a step closer to genuine inner maturity. When forced to change too much, people fall into a state of role confusion, not knowing which part is truly themselves and which part is just an act for the sake of peace. Gradually, this inner disconnection leads to feelings of loneliness, discouragement, and even depression or loss of direction. That is the silent yet costly price for trading away your identity for the comfort and temporary consensus in relationships. Try looking back at the truly healthy relationships in your life. In those, you are free to be yourself, you are valued, and listened to. On the other hand, the relationships that require you to change in order to fit in or blend, in reality, only make you more tired and never feeling good enough. As Jung wrote, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. The greatest loneliness does not come from a lack of friends, but from not daring, not being able, or not being allowed to express your true self. The more you concede, the more you feel the distance between yourself and the world growing, and eventually, you no longer recognize yourself. That is the real price of trading your identity for acceptance from the outside. Inner freedom, peace, and the sense of living fully only appear when you stop chasing others' wishes, know how to protect your personal boundaries, and at the same time, respect the diversity within yourself as well as in others. Refusing to change for someone else does not mean you are rigid, selfish, or lacking in progressiveness. It is a sign of self-respect and a deep understanding of your own value. A truly mature person knows how to listen to feedback, but is also clear-minded enough not to lose themselves just because of the pressure to conform or the fear of disappointing others. Jung once emphasized, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. There is no universal recipe for life, just as there is no identity worth trading away for temporary assimilation. Finally, if you have ever found yourself having to fix, distort, or even quietly give up a part of yourself just because someone asked you to, pause and ask yourself, whose life am I living? 8. Listen carefully to your inner voice, because it is the only compass that will keep you from getting lost among the endless trends, standards, and pressures of society and relationships. True maturity is not about how many people you can please, but about daring to face, accept, and live fully with your true self. Have you ever felt that you had to change just to please someone? Is there anything you have ever given up, hidden, or distorted, just because you were afraid of disappointing someone? Share your story or thoughts below, because perhaps that very experience will inspire someone else to live more authentically on their own journey. You deserve to be yourself, not a copy of anyone else. 5. Putting their feelings above your own. In many relationships, from family ties and friendships to romantic love and even work connections, there is a subtle form of manipulation that is often overlooked. You are expected to sacrifice your feelings, needs, and personal desires just to please someone else. Sometimes, this sacrifice is disguised with sweet words like, "If you really care, you'll understand me. Please be sympathetic to me." Or, "I just need you for a little bit." Many people are pushed into a position where they have to yield, accept disadvantages, or live according to someone else's emotional standards because they fear being judged as cold, selfish, or unloving. Every time you say no to those expectations, you have to face reproachful looks, judgment, or even be labeled as unfilial, unable to sacrifice, or unable to put yourself in someone else's shoes. To avoid conflict, you choose to compromise, step back, and little by little, you learn to ignore your true feelings in order to keep the peace or simply to make others feel more comfortable. At first, these sacrifices may come from goodwill, from love, or simply from the desire to nurture a good relationship. But when yielding becomes a habit, you will soon realize you are living in a role where your own feelings and desires are always secondary to others. The times you force yourself not to cause trouble, the times you hold back tears, swallow sadness, hide your frustrations just to keep the atmosphere easy. All of it accumulates into hidden wounds inside. Sadly, in many cultures, especially in Asia, such sacrifice is even praised as a moral standard, as a sign of maturity, or as proof of love and selflessness. You grow up with lessons like, think of others, live for the group, don't be selfish, gradually losing the habit of listening to, respecting, and protecting your own feelings. Carl Jung once wrote, "The foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering." The deeper meaning of this statement is that many psychological issues arise from people trying to avoid their true feelings, refusing to face pain, hurt, or the dissatisfaction within their hearts. When you constantly put the feelings and needs of others above your own, you are also denying your true feelings, seeing them as secondary, as something that should be ignored to avoid conflict. Over time, this kind of sacrifice not only erodes your personal value, but also distorts your inner world, leaving you unable to tell what you truly want and what you only do out of fear of being judged. Those who live in this state for too long gradually lose the ability to connect with themselves, easily falling into emotional numbness or a sense of aimlessness and emptiness, even as they try to appear fine on the outside. According to Jung, the essence of maturity is knowing how to respect your own boundaries, needs, and feelings. This is not selfishness, but the foundation for building real balance and peace. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. In reality, only when you dare to act based on your own values, desires, and personal limits can you live authentically, take responsibility for yourself, and bring positive energy to your relationships. Conversely, if you keep suppressing yourself, sacrificing to please others, you will soon feel that you are merely existing, not truly living, just fulfilling endless expectations, never feeling respected or whole. Many people confuse kindness with always being the emotional life raft for others. But if a relationship can only exist when you must sacrifice yourself, is that truly love? Those who frequently manipulate emotions, forcing you to choose between your own happiness and their comfort, are actually avoiding their own responsibility to mature. They use insecurity, sulking, and mental pressure to control and manipulate your behavior, turning your sacrifice into an unspoken rule. When you start to push back and speak up for yourself, they use your own compassion to make you feel guilty or wrong. It is a dangerous spiral, and the deeper you fall, the more you lose your ability to define your own value. One of the hardest consequences to notice when you always put other people's feelings above your own is that you will gradually lose your harmony and inner peace. The conflict between your personal needs and the pressure to yield creates hidden tensions, leading to prolonged stress, anxiety, sadness, or anger, for no apparent reason. Sometimes, you may find yourself getting irritated or upset over minor things, or slipping into a state of whatever, anything goes, as a last-ditch effort to protect an overwhelmed soul. Many people develop psychological issues such as anxiety, depression, or even insomnia, and a loss of vitality simply because they do not dare or do not know how to express their true feelings, set boundaries, and care for themselves. Jung once said, "To be normal is the ideal aim of the unsuccessful." When you try to live up to standards, yield so no one is uncomfortable, and do everything to please everyone while forgetting yourself, you will gradually lose motivation, passion, and even the inspiration to live. A life that is not lived authentically is just existence, not the full experience that everyone deserves. Balance does not come from sacrificing or shouldering everything. It comes from your ability to listen to, understand, and respect yourself, while also empowering others to take responsibility for their own feelings and choices. Those who truly love you will want to see you happy, whole, and brave enough to live authentically, not just a copy who endures and sacrifices only to provide someone else with a false sense of security. Another important point is that if you continuously please others by setting aside your own feelings, you are also setting a precedent for unhealthy relationships in the future. You unintentionally teach others that coming to you always means they'll get your compliance and unconditional acceptance, even if it hurts you. Over time, you yourself will be drained of energy, struggle to establish safe boundaries, and feel increasingly alienated from your own inner world. Every human life contains a potential. If that potential is not fulfilled, then that life was wasted. You might be surrounded by many people, seemingly living just fine. But deep down, the best part of you, your potential for living, loving, and creating has been suffocated. To truly grow up, to be able to connect and spread love in a meaningful way, you need to learn how to put your feelings and needs on the same level, or even above those of others when necessary. It is a powerful choice, one that may sometimes be misunderstood or criticized, but only by doing so can you maintain your inner integrity and protect your most important values. True peace does not come from everyone being satisfied. It comes from being able to live with respect, comfort, and understanding toward yourself. Have you ever felt you had to sacrifice your feelings and desires just to keep the peace or please someone? Have you ever wanted to say no, but felt guilty or afraid of being misunderstood? Share your story or thoughts in the comments below. because maybe your experience will be a reminder and inspiration for others to love and respect themselves more on the journey to living authentically every day, actively creating joy. After the courageous journey of setting boundaries and refusing to carry burdens that aren't yours, many people, especially those with life experience and who have been through many upheavals, will fall into a particular state of emptiness. It's a quiet feeling when part of an old habit has been broken, traditional worries have been set aside, but new joys have not yet arrived to fill the space. For many, this void feels like an emotional vessel drained of water, without having yet found a way to replenish the soul with fresh drops. Quite a few people, after cutting off toxic relationships and ceasing to be the shoulder to save others, suddenly realize they don't know what to do next to truly live joyfully and meaningfully. It's precisely at this stage that the act of consciously creating joy becomes a deeply necessary remedy for the spirit. After years of putting others first, people gradually forget that they once knew how to enjoy small pleasures, once felt excited about new things, once felt alive and curious about the world. In reality, when dopamine, the hormone of happiness and motivation, is depleted due to stress or continuous sacrifice, you easily fall into a state of numbness, lack of inspiration, or even despair. That's why creating dopamine isn't just theory. It's a very real biological, psychological, and spiritual need for the middle-aged or anyone who has just freed themselves from old constraints. Carl Jung once said, "The creative mind plays with the objects it loves." This quote reminds everyone of the power of actively seeking out joy, exploring new things, not as a privilege of youth, but as medicine that keeps the soul fresh at any age. You don't need to climb mountains, travel luxuriously, or do something extraordinary to feel happy. Sometimes, just a small new experience is enough to awaken a soul that has slept through worries, wounds, or long-standing boredom. So, what does creating joy actually mean? It's the act of deliberately planning and trying out small, short-term, easy-to-do activities that are enough to create a positive wave of dopamine in the brain. Maybe you've never learned a new dance. Find a dance class, a tutorial video. Try dancing in your living room when no one's watching. You once thought you had no artistic talent. Try drawing a simple picture, playing an instrument, or just sitting down and allowing yourself to write poetry, write stories, create anything, regardless of whether it's good or not. The important thing is not the result, but the sense of aliveness and freedom you get when you try something new just to please yourself. You don't need to run away from everyday life. You can cultivate joy right within the most ordinary days. Give yourself a day off from responsibility. Sit and enjoy coffee at a new cafe, wake up early to cycle around the park, or simply cook a new dish and savor it as a private ritual. Walk in the forest, plant a new pot of greenery, stroll through the city with no particular purpose, or finally start a hobby you've long dreamed of but never dared to try. All of these micro-adventures are just the right dose of dopamine. Not overwhelming, not pressured, but awakening the excitement, creativity, and zest for life that seemed buried in each person after years of living for others. Many people think joy is just a consequence, but in reality, it needs to be actively planned and protected as a part of mental health. You can write a bucket list of things you want to try this year, breaking it down into a new experience every month. Choose things you once thought weren't for you, or, now that I'm grown up. Wouldn't that be weird? In truth, it is precisely these experiences that will remind you of a part of your instinct that has been asleep, daring to be curious, daring to take gentle risks, daring to start over without fear of being judged. Writing down your feelings after each new experience is also a way to communicate with yourself, to clearly see that you are growing, reconnecting, and recharging for the next stage of your journey. Jung once said, "Without this playing with fantasy, no creative work has ever yet come to birth. The debt we owe to the play of the imagination is incalculable." This means that playing with imagination and experimenting with new things is the root of creativity, the source of inspiration for life, and the foundation for all the deepest positive transformations. When you allow yourself to have fun, you are truly healing old wounds, sending yourself the message that you deserve to enjoy, not just to please others or because of some duty or responsibility. The first step of curated joy is not to force yourself to feel happy right away, but to bravely step out of the comfort zone that has frozen your emotions for so long. At first, you may feel empty, unsure of what to do for fun, or even feel awkward with yourself when trying something new. Don't rush to force yourself to be excited. Start with small, simple changes. Then listen to how your mind and body respond. As dopamine is gradually reactivated bit by bit, you'll notice you're no longer clinging to that old emptiness, no longer afraid of being left behind by the burdens you've let go, but instead, you feel open-hearted, ready to keep living with more meaning. Try choosing a joyful day this week, a day with no strict schedule, no burdens, just time to explore something small you've never allowed yourself to try before. It could be making a gift for yourself, going to the movies alone, or simply sitting in silence to write down things you're grateful for, things that make you happy, or things that once made you smile. You'll be surprised at the spiritual revival these little things bring, even if no one else notices from the outside, but within you. Sparks of dopamine have returned, quietly nurturing joy and the meaning of life. Now, ask yourself, how long has it been since you did something new just to indulge yourself? What is something you once enjoyed, but have since forgotten? If you had to make a list of 5 micro-adventures to try in the next month, what would you choose? Leave your thoughts or feelings in the comments below, or try a mini exercise. Write down 3 things you've always wanted to try but haven't dared, and commit to doing at least one of them this week. Joy is not a gift waiting for you, but the result of actively cultivating it every day, and you can absolutely start at any time, no matter how many ups and downs you've been through in life. Rebuilding meaningful relationships. Maturity is a journey that not only moves forward, but sometimes is also a journey of returning inward, facing important relationships that were once neglected, forgotten, or accidentally lost. As people grow older, especially after experiencing pain, breakdowns, or major upheavals, they become deeply aware of one thing. Not all relationships are the same, and not every relationship is worthy of investment. Gone are the days of draining yourself for superficial social connections, just to have your name included in the community circle or out of fear of loneliness. What we crave is deep connection relationships that truly touch the soul, where we can be ourselves, be listened to, be empathized with, be inspired, and also inspire in return. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When 2 souls truly connect, both are transformed, renewed, and grow. These are no longer pointless conversations, meetings out of obligation, or role-playing encounters. This is where you feel the meaning of your life through the eyes, stories, emotions, and memories of the person in front of you, and vice versa." Unfortunately, those in middle age, especially after many upheavals, are easily trapped in the fear of loneliness or in relationships built out of duty or formality. They may be busy with family, work, or avoiding old wounds that have not yet healed, and so let people who once mattered in their lives gradually drift away. An old friend who helped you through tough times, a teacher who inspired you to dare to live differently, a colleague who stood by your side in great challenges, or a relative estranged by a small misunderstanding long ago. Over the years, the distance keeps stretching, the calls that never get made, the words of care left unspoken, the letters never sent, all gradually create a pause in the soul, sometimes deeper than any material loss. Therefore, after the journey of letting go of burdens, setting boundaries, learning to live authentically, and actively creating joy, proactively rebuilding meaningful relationships becomes a true turning point in consciousness. This is not about reconciliation through compromise, nor about making peace with relationships that once suffocated you in the past. This topic is a call for everyone to calmly look back. Who was truly important to you? Who was once a source of inspiration? Who helped you stand back up? Or simply, who made you feel most like yourself? Jung believed, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. The greatest loneliness is when you cannot communicate, cannot share what is truly important with someone else. If someone once made you feel understood, gave you strength, that is a sign of a meaningful relationship worth reconnecting with. Even after many years apart, Rebuilding meaningful relationships is not a quest for quantity, nor is it about reconnecting just to fill a void. It is the intentional choice to invest time, energy, sincerity, and gratitude in those who truly, chemically resonate with your soul. It is maturity when you dare to pick up the phone to call an old friend, send a letter, plan a meeting, or simply text with openness, not expecting anything in return, but deep enough to rekindle the beautiful emotional bond that once lay dormant. More importantly, this is when you truly know how to set boundaries, proactively select, and only preserve the connections that give you a sense of safety, trust, positivity, and the freedom to be yourself. These meaningful relationships can be very different in terms of time, circumstances, or even geographical distance. But as long as there is enough sincerity and openness, every meeting can become a source of spiritual nourishment, helping you heal old wounds without anyone needing to apologize or revisit the past. In those relationships, you are listened to without judgment, able to share both joys and sorrows, and most importantly, inspired to keep growing. If you have gone through losses and heartbreak, you probably appreciate even more the value of a timely hug, a heartfelt encouragement, or just a knowing glance. Proactively rebuilding and reconstructing these relationships is not simply about going back, but is a step forward for a mature person, daring to live with a new sense of self, daring to open up, and willing to invest in what truly matters. Jung once reminded us, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you dare to face old misunderstandings, conflicts, or distances, you not only reconnect with others, but also discover and improve yourself on a deeper level. Take a moment to reflect. Is there someone you once cherished, who was your emotional support, but you haven't contacted in a long time? Is there someone who once inspired you, who helped you through hard times but you never had the chance to thank? Is there someone you still remember, even though you've lost touch, but you know that just a message or a sincere greeting would be enough to warm up that relationship again? This week, choose one person, just one, to actively reconnect with. That could mean sending a message, making a call, writing a letter, or arranging to meet in person. Let everything happen naturally, without pressure, and without too many expectations for the outcome. The most important thing is that you dared to knock on the door of beautiful memories. Open yourself to the positive spiritual resonance that you deserve on this journey of maturity. Are you thinking of someone right now? Are you ready to try something small to reconnect, even if it's just a simple hello, or sharing a beautiful memory you once had together? Share your feelings or your plan in the comments below, or try writing out a list of 3 important people you want to reconnect with in the coming month. Sometimes, a small action is enough to open a new chapter for the most meaningful relationships in your life. Practicing personal meaning of life. After all the transformations and growth, when one has learned to protect boundaries and heal deep wounds, the next great thing that the soul is always searching for is a personal meaning of life, a purpose large enough not to depend on the views, expectations of others, or social standards. This meaning of life is no longer simply duty or obligation, not a role assigned by family or community, but something each person discovers for themselves, defines for themselves, creates for themselves, and proactively nurtures for themselves. The more people experience, the more they have endured heartbreak, the more they crave to live a life with their own mark, a sense of pride, something to leave for the next generation, a journey where every day is memorable and truly belongs to them. Carl Jung once wrote, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." Therefore, the meaning of life does not have to be grand, but only needs to be deep enough to light up a part of the darkness, to create hope and positive energy for the person who possesses it and for the small world around them. For those in midlife who have been through so many upheavals, this new sense of life must be close, practical, and deeply connected to the personal values they have gathered and forged over the years. This is not about searching for something outside, but is a journey of returning inward, listening, honoring, and cherishing every experience, every lesson of their own, turning them into a treasure, to continue living the next part of life fully, freely, and with inspiration. So how can one truly practice the personal meaning of life? There is no universal roadmap for everyone, but there are ways for each person to discover, define, and nurture their own sense of purpose through rituals, habits, or personal arts. One of the most powerful practices is keeping an emotional journal, where you listen to and have honest conversations with yourself every day. Write down big emotions, small joys, things you are grateful for, or simply fleeting thoughts. This is a way to reconnect with your deepest core, to realize what you truly want, what brings meaning, and what should be let go. Themed meditation is also a method to help you center yourself, observe, and identify the values you want to nurture. You can choose a keyword each week, for example, growth, freedom, creativity, giving. Then sit quietly, breathe deeply, and let your mind lead you through memories, images, and emotions related to that theme. After each meditation session, write down or draw your feelings. This not only helps the meaning of life become clearer, but also serves as a ritual to remind you to return to yourself. Creating art, whether painting, writing poetry, sculpting, playing a musical instrument, or redecorating your living space, is also a way to connect with and express your personal identity. The result is not important. What matters is that you are living in the creative flow, making something meaningful for yourself with your own hands. Even planting a tree, tending a small garden, or creating a memory corner in your home with objects symbolizing your journey can become a living symbol for your new sense of meaning. You can also practice making a personal meaning map, listing values, memories, milestones, or unfulfilled dreams, then drawing or attaching images to represent each of those meanings, and hanging it where you see it most often. Each day, spend a few minutes reflecting, reminding yourself, and proactively adding to or adjusting that map when you discover new desires emerging along your life's journey. This ritual not only helps your sense of meaning become clearer, but is also a way to maintain your passion, gratitude, and personal pride. Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Living a meaningful life is not about chasing someone else's dreams, but about daring to face, listen to, and honor your own heart. When you master these rituals and meaningful practices, you will not only feel a true awakening, but also inspire positive energy for the next generation, for your loved ones, friends, and those still searching for their own purpose. Have you ever tried practicing a personal meaning ritual? If you had to choose a symbol for your new journey right now, what would you choose? A notebook, a painting, a green plant, or a small personal item? Try doing a small exercise. This week, spend 15 minutes each day on a practice, journaling, meditating, drawing, or anything that helps you deeply connect with yourself, and write down the feelings, realizations, or meanings you discover. Sometimes, just one small ritual is enough to create a big sense of meaning for the new stage of your life. You may discover more than you ever expected. Through the journey of exploring the 5 requests you should never accept, we have clearly seen one important common thread. All of these demands are ultimately aimed at eroding your inner peace, personal boundaries, and unique identity. Never forget Carl Jung's teaching. Protecting your boundaries, preserving your peace, and being able to live true to yourself is the greatest privilege and the most precious asset of a lifetime. Your value does not lie in your ability to endlessly meet the needs of others, but in the wholeness of your true self within. From this moment forward, have the courage to set boundaries. You do not have to become a savior to solve everyone else's problems. You don't have to be a bank to fund irresponsibility. You don't have to be a referee to intervene in dramas that are not yours. And most importantly, you do not need to change your true self just to please anyone. Choose a different path, protect yourself, live true to your core values, and build the life you truly deserve. Your peace and freedom are not negotiable. Have you ever experienced any of these 5 requests? Which boundary do you find the hardest to protect, and how did you overcome it? Please share your story and experiences in the comments below. This community is where we learn together how to protect our living space. And if you found this video helpful and inspiring, don't forget to like and share to spread this powerful message to those who need it. More importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss content that helps you connect more deeply with yourself and unlock your inner strength according to the philosophy of Carl Jung. Remember, your peace is the most valuable thing you possess. Protect it with all your courage.